Kath Megaw, and I've partnered with PediaSure to bring you a very exciting series on picky eating. This vlog series has covered a range of different topics, from constipation to feeding during illness, nutritional rehab, the sensory eater, and today we get to talk about a topic which is very close to my heart: mindful eating and developing a healthy relationship with food. Now, food is something we can't do without. We can't avoid it. It's something we need from a baby until the day we die. We are going to need food. So it's really a good idea to develop a good relationship with it. And that's what you want to encourage your child to do. Now, the first place to start as a parent is looking at what is our relationship with food? How do you view food? Is food a positive thing in your life? Is it pleasurable or is it a burden? And it's really important to kind of think about it. Maybe you've never given it any thought. Maybe it's just a hassle and it's something you've got to do, or maybe you just love eating and enjoy food and call yourself a foodie. So it's important to go through that and kind of go thinking back in time. How was food for me growing up? What experiences did I have with food as a parent when I was growing up that enables me to impart those type of similar experiences that were positive to my child? So there's a few questions that you can go through. The first one you can ask yourself is, what is a good memory around food? And then look at what were the common factors there and what food was involved in those positive food memories. Then you can think about what were your negative food memories. What were some of the common factors there, and what foods were involved in some of those negative memories? Another thing you can ask yourself is, were you ever labeled as a picky eater yourself? Or maybe you still call yourself a picky eater and you're older now. Do you currently avoid a whole food group, or did you used to avoid a food group? And suddenly you might find you come up with some answers that help you understand maybe the way you are perceiving your child. Sometimes we find that a mom who was extremely picky eater as a child doesn't want her child to be that way, so is overly concerned about it. Or a parent who had a very negative experience with food growing up doesn't want that same negative experience for food with their child, and so they want to try and create a different sort of environment. So it's really important to understand how we view food from our own perspective, because we are going to impart those sort of behaviors onto our child without even realizing it, because our children are copycats. They learn through copying, and they learn by watching what we do. You know, you hear that saying, it's not what you say, but what you do that counts. It's very much like that when it comes to eating and the feeding environment. So if your child never gets to see you eat, they're not going to learn eating and feeding behavior from you. So it's really important that they get opportunities where they can copy you, where they can follow what you're doing, where they can see you eating the colors of vegetables and the range of meats and the range of proteins, even what you're chewing. They've got to learn how to chew. So they need to observe this and watch you chew. And another thought to think about is, what eating behaviors would you like to impart to your child that you grew up with, that you feel is positive in your own life? And maybe also what eating behaviors you don't want to impart, because if you're aware of that, you can actually make some conscious decisions either to change some certain things or to keep going and really reinforce other things. So the way you view food and your behavior around food really does impact your child and their ultimate beginning of their feeding journey. Something else that is really important to teach your child is to eat mindfully. So to think about and be conscious about what they are eating. For your picky eater, that can be very challenging, because you almost don't want them to think too much about the food, because if they think about it, they might actually stop eating it. So what I'd suggest with your picky eater, and especially if your picky eater is a bit sensory as well, is use some of the mindful techniques around food, more around the foods they really love. So for example, if they love a cookie, you can say to them, how does that cookie taste? How does it smell? What noise does it make when you bite into it? And you can use words like, is it sweet, or is it crunchy? Does it feel smooth? And little things like that. What is the color of the cookie? And so start with something that they really enjoy, that they eat easily, and that will be great, because then they can start to create an awareness, so that when you introduce some of the other foods or the newer foods, you can use terminology like the smell, what does it look like, what does it taste like, and they are familiar already with that and feel safe with that. So suddenly you can unpack the food that they eat in, and this allows them to actually consciously move forward with regards to choices when it comes to choosing a variety of different foods. And this makes it a lot of fun. Now you might think, good grief, if I have to sit at every mealtime and go through every single food on the plate, it's going to take ages to get through a meal. So that's not what I'm asking you to do. What we're asking you to do is really to just take out moments in the day where you can just be present and conscious with your child around the food that they eat in. And even start with being mindful about your own food. Be conscious about it. Are you chewing it? How does it taste different after you've chewed it? When you swallow it, how much chewing do you need to do before you swallow it? And those are things that can really help kids. One of the things we find with picky eaters is that they can become quite fearful about choking, or if certain foods have threatened a gag in them, they are resistant to those foods. And so by explaining them and being mindful about the food and conscious with the eating and the chewing, they realize that they actually are in control of the food when it's in their mouth, and the food is not overpowering and controlling them. And this makes it a much easier way to progress onto maybe bigger textures, bigger pieces of food, and especially your protein foods, because protein foods are often the foods that are avoided by most picky eaters. And so what you want to do is you want to encourage them to chew, but to also realize that it's not going to threaten them. They won't choke. If they chew well and they enjoy their food, they're not going to choke on it. So being mindful and understanding feeding behavior is so helpful when it comes to helping out your little picky eater and as you are resolving their picky eating journey. Another thing that I would really like you to be aware of is that eating together with your child. So sitting at the table and not always having blaring TV on and screens and things like that present is really important in creating mindfulness and positive feeding behavior. Now, sometimes as parents, we don't all get home in time to sit and eat meals with our children, but it's ideal if at least one parent can sit and actually eat a meal together with the child. And that might mean when your partner comes home, you just have to sit and enjoy a glass of wine with them, but you've eaten your meal with your child. And it's really valuable, especially in these early years when they're little, their feeding times are earlier. But if they don't see you eating and they don't see the variety of food on your plate, they are definitely not going to want to make choices outside of their comfort zone of just kind of the bland or the simple foods that they are used to eating. So it is really wise to do that. Maybe give yourselves one night a week where it's your time to have supper together with your partner, especially if you have recurrent late nights. So that is my suggestion when it comes to just how to incorporate meal times as a family. Children actually love sitting together and social eating. And if you think about some of the memories I asked you to look back on, they probably do include other people and not eating in isolation. I actually have seldom come across someone recalling a positive food memory that left them feeling good and a feeling of enjoyment, and that wasn't shared with other people. And that is really important in the psychological journey of feeding and the improving of feeding behavior. So I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to just take a look back. Take a moment in time to just sit back and think about your experience of feeding so that you can create an even more exciting and fun-filled food journey for your child.